I've been wanting to get a milling machine for my home shop for a while now. I'm predominantly a woodworker, but I've really been wanting to get into metalworking. While trolling Craigslist recently, I stumbled across this Rockwell 21-122 horizontal and vertical milling machine. It was built in the 60s, and it looks like the various owners throughout the years have taken great care of it. There's a layer of grime and a bit of rust, but generally everything is in great condition. All the moving parts slide fluidly and easily. The ways look like they're in really good shape. The table has seen better days, but there's not terrible nicks or gouges in it. This particular machine is smaller than a Bridgeport, but definitely larger than your kind of small benchtop mill. It weighs in at just under 1,000 pounds, and it was a lot of fun to get home by myself. This particular machine came with a huge amount of tooling, which was part of the appeal. It helped kind of bootstrap my machine shop at home. It also had some nice features like this power feed on the x-axis. There's an additional power feed that's not installed, which I'll put on probably the knee at some point. This particular machine also came with all the horizontal attachments, like the overarm support and the horizontal arbor, which is a really great find. A lot of these Rockwells apparently are missing the horizontal accessories. The only real problem with this machine is that the quill doesn't fully actuate, and it gets stuck at about inch and a half, and doesn't fully retract into the spindle. The fine feed control is also a little rough. Probably just needs some oil. Overall, I'm super happy that I found this machine. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My main plans, after playing with it a bit, are to tear it apart, clean out the bearings, check the spindle, see what's getting stuck, and generally just remove rust and probably strip paint. But first, I couldn't resist playing with it a little bit. Now, like I said, it's mostly a wood shop in my garage, so I don't really have a whole lot of metal. But I did have a few pieces of scrap, just aluminum. So I put it in the vise, which came with the mill as well, and found a random end mill. I don't really know what I grabbed, to be honest, and just started playing with it. So after a bit of head scratching and looking at things, I realized the end mill was going the wrong direction. Now, this wasn't actually my fault, at least I don't think it was, unless I grabbed some kind of left-handed reversed end mill. It turns out that the forward and backward buttons on the machine are actually reversed. So someone probably messed around with the electronics at some point. You can't hear it here, but I'm giggling like a little kid at the moment. This was a lot of fun. After making sure everything seemed to be working, and admittedly just playing around for a while, it was time to start actually disassembling it. The first step is to take the motor off the vertical head. The motor is attached directly to a set of pulleys, so you have to be careful when you remove it, because the pulleys are a little fragile. The pulleys, the original pulleys, are supposed to be cast iron. These don't look like they're cast iron, or someone's cleaned them up recently, so they might have been replaced at some point. The next step is to unbolt the rest of the head and pull off the remaining pulley attachment. With the head removed, you can access the spindle and the quill itself and clean off the grime and then pull out the quill. At least that was the plan. The spindle's held on by a circlip, which I'm pretty sure are sent by the devil himself to this world to make our lives miserable. Circlips just never come off easily, even when you have the correct tools. After a bit of struggle, I did manage to get this one off and didn't destroy anything, which is always a win. What you can see me doing here is a little unorthodox, but basically the fine feed stop was stuck and wouldn't come out. There is a hole to access it from the bottom, but there's no screw mechanism to unscrew it. So what I was doing here was using a cheap Harbor Freight clamp to slowly inch the stops down, and by putting pressure on the stops downwards, it forced the screw upwards, which essentially moved it out and got me to a point where I could free it. All right, so I pulled off the quill and the fine feed control on the side, and I looked inside and there's a little surprise. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if we can focus on that. I have no idea what that is. I think it's mouse shit. I don't know. But that's kind of fun. Never know what you're gonna find in these old machines. After finding that little surprise, the next step was to get the ram off, which was pretty easy. I had it soaking in penetrating oil for a while, gave it a few more sprays, and then just knocked it out gently. It's not as heavy as it looks once you've removed the head. Most of the weight's in the motor and the pulley housing. So once I dumped out the contents of the ram, it wasn't actually mouse droppings as I originally guessed. As it turns out, it looks like it's just a bunch of seeds. I think they're sunflower seeds. Maybe the previous owner ate them around the shop, and a little acorn. In any case, some little critter had found those and stashed them away for some cold winter day. From here on out, it was just a lot of cleaning and scrubbing and elbow grease. I'm using Simple Green and just a Scotch-Brite to take some of the surface rust off and get a lot of the grime and grease cut back. Once I get everything degreased and a lot of the paint taken off, most of these parts will go into Evaporust to take off the rust. So I'm not too worried about getting them spotless and shining right now, mostly just trying to get the grime and grease off. It's funny, I'm not really a cleanly person, to be honest. I'm pretty disorganized, I'm pretty messy, but I just really enjoy watching things get cleaned up in fast motion. There's just something really satisfying about watching a part go from grimy and dirty to relatively clean in a few short seconds. Once the parts are mostly degreased, the next step for a lot of them is to apply citrus strip. This is kind of it's a pink gel goop that you apply liberally to the paint and give it a few hours to 24 hours later, and the paint essentially just peels right off. It's really wonderful stuff. I'm working out in my really cold garage and just let these sit 24 hours usually. And I come back the next day and they look nice and sprinkled like this. And then it just takes a little bit of scrubbing with a brush and sometimes some scraping with a razor, and the paint comes right off. While stripping the paint on this project, it became pretty apparent that there are two coats of paint that I'm working through. There's the top gray color, and then below that there was a blue-gray. So it looks like someone had repainted the mill at some point without stripping it first. Well, that's about it for this episode. Next time we'll be in full swing degreasing, cleaning, stripping mode. We'll take apart the fine feed control, the quill, the spindle, probably start working on the table. We have a whole lot of cleaning to do. Once we get everything prepped, we'll move on to taping, masking, and getting ready to spray.